So, Diversify by Design, D by D, is a coalition of organizations and individuals that joined forces in 2021 to create a more racially diverse and inclusive design industry. One of our critical goals is to create opportunities for historically excluded young people to learn about design and connect with successful designers. And in that spirit, D by D's AMA series was developed. So the D by D AMA series serves as a platform for designers who champion diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And in the space, the speakers, the designers share more information about their career trajectory, life experiences, and really the things that they've dedicated their careers to creating. And with that, we are super excited, delighted, all the things to welcome you to to tonight's Ask Me Anything series, where we are joined by Director of UX and UI at Amazon Games, and not to mention D by D Advisory Council member, Corey Dangel. So, Corey, thank you. A little round of applause. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Glad
and
to be here.
glad to have you. So glad to have you. We were just talking about the humongous role that you have played in D by D, and we're going to get to that at some point in the conversation. But before we start in the present day, let's like maybe take it back a beat. So you have had an incredible journey from the early days of computer games to leading a UX and UI practice at Amazon Game Studios. And to just kick things off, we want to know what were some pivotal moments in your career that really shaped your approach to leadership and design?
Awesome. I kind of can't wait to talk about this, but we have to start in the beginning
Okay. In
because
the beginning, there was.
I know, right? And it's been 30 years, which is absolutely insane, and it goes in a blink of an eye. But it really does kind of start in the beginning because one of the
Yeah.
first lessons that I really learned getting out of college and just literally hitting the ground with portfolio in hand and looking for work, I had to learn about resilience, and I had to learn about tailoring a message to an audience. It started with I'd been uh, I did pretty well in school, and I had a lot of professors and advisors who were kind of looking out for me, and they saw my work and they were like, "Hey, there's an up and coming studio in Seattle." They were getting all of the feature work and how and step by step and communication arts and like all the magazines. They were at the forefront of what at the time was called desktop publishing. That's how far back it goes. Yeah. And I got to interview with these guys, and it was really cool, and I was super excited. I was like, awesome. This is it. This is the beginning. And I'm going into this really swanky design studio with these kind of heroic designer people, and uh we start talking about my work, and their faces went from being happy and kind of excited to talk to me to rather concerned and perplexed. And I felt the temperature drop, and I just sort of stumbled through my book. And at the end of the presentation, they looked at me and they were going like, well, I don't really know what to do with you. Your work's a little nebulous. I was like, nebulous? That doesn't feel good. And one of the founders just sort of left. He was like out. Yeah, I don't know what to do. This guy. The other founder, he like took me aside and felt sorry for me. He's like, yeah, like I can see some ideas here, and this was kind of interesting, but I just really don't see what your point of view is, and I just don't know how you can help us do anything. And so I was like, I was just crestfallen. And I remember the longest elevator ride going down. I was holding back tears and thinking to myself, maybe I'm not cut out for this business. And I just don't know why I even want to be around such mean people who would
Yeah.
tell me my work is nebulous. But by the time I got home, it was funny. I was like, well, I could do this or I could do that. And I sat down on my Macintosh computer and I just started designing stuff because I was like trying to find myself. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I actually really like doing this. And maybe the problem is that I didn't pick a point of view. I showed a capabilities piece. I showed like, look at all the things I can do. I can typeset. I can, like I know how to Adobe Illustrator, even though it was Adobe Illustrator 88. Like I can do all of these things, but it was like
Yeah.
it was a tools oriented thing as opposed to communicating. but that lesson really set in stone. It's like you need to know who your audience is, you need to know what you're trying to communicate, and you need to be clear and have a through line. And what I actually ended up doing from that is I ended up making multiple portfolios that I would bring to different clients and different work. So I would do the research and be like, oh, you're in this industry? I have just the thing for you. Blam. You're in this industry? Boom. And that has been, again, it's like pivotal, being able to use that every step of the way on every single project. Know who your audience is, know what their needs are, know what their motivations are, shape the experiences to reinforce and satisfy those requirements.
Yeah, and I number 1, I always have a pen and paper when I'm having these conversations because I'm like, "I'm here to learn too." You learn so much from these conversations, and one little note that I wrote down just now is that it's so interesting and I think inspiring that your response to rejection was to design more. And you had that
Yeah.
moment where you're
Yeah.
like, "Do I wanna do this?"
Do I
But
even want to do
then
this?
even your spirit sort of asked that question because even if your answer was no, you were designing already before, you even got to stop, and so I love that, in that instance, there was a moment where you were like, but you also were like, "Let me go design something else," you know?
That's right.
And then just what you took from it, this idea of knowing your audience and being like, "Oh, your thing is this. I've got just the thing for you." So I love that you learned that. One question, just kind of off of what you just mentioned, is how has the feedback that you gained or the feedback that you gained in that moment, how has it impacted the way that you give feedback? Because
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
needed that harsh kind of
Mm-hmm.
real feedback
Mm-hmm.
to kinda get to the next step. You weren't babied in that moment,
I
but you
was not.
also did have that moment where you were like, "I don't know about this," and you also don't wanna discourage students. And so
I
what was it like for you
Yeah,
to
no, that's great. That's a beautiful
Yeah.
question too. And I just sort of believe in being, generous and caring, but there's also like sometimes telling someone the truth in a kind and supporting way is the best thing that they need to know. And so I've had people who have come to me with their portfolios and they weren't very good. And I
Mhm.
have I have had to have the okay, so
Did
let
you
me
call them nebulous?
no, I did not. I did not use that word, but I have said like, do you want do you want an attaboy or an attagirl, or or do you want real constructive feedback? Because I kind of need to know. Because sometimes people don't really want the constructive feedback. Um, and so in some cases I've had to say, like, you've got a lot of work to do to get to where you're a marketable commodity because I can't tell what it is that you're trying to build, you know? And it's really important to learn to look at your work and compare it against what is the North Star of whatever domain it is that you're interested in. So if you're like you just need to have a realistic assessment of where you are. You don't just pick up a guitar and become a famous musician. Like you practice and you compare yourself to other people. You have influences, you develop your own voice, and then you can show off. And sometimes people do need that. I did kind of need to hear that I needed to refine what my point of view is. Interestingly enough, one of my
Mhm.
superpowers, though, is that I can adapt to just about any point of view. I'm a very good mimic. And so I can both have a point of view or I call it dial a style. I can kind of lean into whatever is needed for the audience and be able to replicate that. Fortunately, I can hire teams to be really, really good at at those kinds of things, but I can fake it well enough that I can get an idea going and then bring people in to be really experts at it.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to come back at some point to this idea of marketable commodity, but there are just so many good things here. So I'm just going to keep following, my script. This is why we create
Okay.
the
Yeah,
script.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
if I don't, I will be all over the place. So much goodness just came
Me
out of
too.
that first question. So I'm going to keep things rolling. You've worked on groundbreaking projects like Total Annihilation and Asheron's Call. What do you consider your proudest achievement, and how did you approach making that project a success?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. There's so many like uh a lot of the game achievements that I'm kind of like I'm happy with really were some of the early days kinds of
Mhm.
things. And the reason for that is there was not a lot to compare to. Like I started doing game work literally before there was an internet, you know? Like I I actually worked on Microsoft's first paid for online subscription based vehicle. Like they didn't have an online presence and it wasn't an internet. You had to dial into a telephone number with your modem and connect to it, and you got like a subscription to, basically it was a sports news thing. We created ESPN before there was an ESPN.
Nice.
Um anyway, but like those early days of gaming were really interesting. We created platforms for people to play games with other people on this brand new thing called the internet. Um, we invented matchmaking and like how do you find friends online and social groups and achievements and
Yeah.
avatars and like all of these things that we take for granted. Uh, we invented. And you know, one of the things that I learned early on in that process was the value of showing, not telling. And I got really good at building prototypes using whatever the tool was at the time. Back then, it was like Macromedia Director. Actually, it was Authorware, then it was Director, then it was Flash. Today, you use Figma. And you know, like, how do I stand up an idea as quickly as I can so I can get feedback and let people touch and feel and react. A lot of times people approach design as if it's almost like you're showing people a beautiful picture in a cookbook, you know, and it's like, here's what your meal is going to be. And it's like, no, no, what you want to do is there's an experience to it, you know, the plating, the candlelight, the
Yeah.
setting, the experience of taking the first bite, what's the mouth feel, flavor, texture, all of that. It's tasting. You have to experience it. And so like how fast can I go and get you to an experience that you're tasting the experience and reacting to it. And then I can know what's working and what's not working. Um, and yeah, I've done a lot. Like I've done a lot of that, just like a whole ton of that. Um, anyway, so I think the ability to stand up an idea quickly, just in general, is something that I guess I'm pretty proud of. Um, the idea to work in a space where it's, speaking of nebulous, it's not defined, right? Like there isn't a roadmap. There's not a lot of um, yeah, there's no precedent, and then you just have to make something. And so you start by making, and then you learn by building.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because when I read your bio, the first thing I saw was Xbox. I'm like, I know Xbox. And so when I asked that question, I thought the first thing that you would be is like Xbox, but it's like you're hearing you speak, you're really proud of just those skills that you've gained. It like there's I'm gonna misquote Jay-Z so poorly in this moment, but like he has this quote about like you can drop him anywhere and he's going to like be able to like stand up a business essentially. And it's kind of like you're not proud of the business, you're not proud of the Xbox, you're proud of the skills where it's like I can create anything anywhere and it with any materials.
I'd love to be in the
Look at
same
me.
conversation as Jay-Z. That's like,
Yes.
I just got goose pimples. What an honor. But yeah, no, for real. I do believe that that's sort of true. And
Yeah.
lest that sound like I'm a cocky person, I'm not really.
Real.
But I have developed a confidence through repetition that I just know that I'm comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm,
I'm comfortable stepping into a situation where there isn't, like I said, a roadmap. And I just know that, like, I don't know what the answer is today. I really don't. People ask me stuff, they ask my opinions on things all the time. And I'm just like, God, I have no idea what the answer is. But give me 2 days and I will get you an answer, you know? And I think one of those like little notes. They call it date for a date.
mhm.
But basically, it's like you don't want to say I don't know. What you want to say is I can tell. Give me a couple of days and I can get you an answer. You know, or I'll
Yeah.
check back in a certain time frame. And that is definitely a tool that's in my toolkit. I use it a lot. And again, each time you do it, you go like, okay, I had no idea how I was going to get there, but I got there. And you do that
Yeah.
enough times, and then you just know, like, okay, just throw me at anything. I'll figure it out. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going
Yeah.
to improvise and make it.
Yeah, I love this idea of confidence through repetition. I think we're in like a time now to where it's like, my TikTok didn't blow up. I'm gonna change to something else. And it's like, no, do it again and do
That's
it
right.
again and
Yeah.
do it again and do it again and keep doing it. So I love that. I know that there are a couple of students that registered to attend. I want to say there are a couple of students on right now live. And so I'm going to kind of ask this question on their behalf. You've been involved in so many different roles in companies. What advice would you give to students who want to build a long lasting career in games or entertainment design?
Mm. Love Love the process, love being curious, love taking things apart and putting them back together again. Love
Mm,
reinventing yourself because guess what? Technology changes every year, every year. Um,
yeah.
you can't get too married to any one way of doing things. So it's like be adaptable, be flexible. I think another thing that's really important for students to develop is a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, and that when you're hired, when somebody hires you, okay, first of all, they're taking a calculated risk. Can you solve a business problem for me? I'm hoping you can. I hope I've seen enough evidence that you can solve a bit, even if it's a creative problem, it's still a business problem. And so what they're looking for is someone that they can plug in and go take on work and reduce their stress. So
Yeah.
it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to learn, but it's also really important to show initiative and go like, "Oh, I understand what your objective is here, and here are three ideas that I think can get us there." Right? Um, I think that's really important. Being additive, right? Being additive to the process. Um, it doesn't help, or at least I don't find it very helpful for someone who like waits. Give me my checklist of things to do and I'll go do them. It's like, no, I need to give you the most bare bones scaffolding of the problem that I'm trying to solve and know that you can go and figure it out. And my obligation in the relationship is to not set you up to fail. My job is to set you up to succeed. So I'm not gonna ask you if you haven't done it before. I'm not going to ask you to solve a major feature problem. I'm going to constrain it, but I still want, like, I want treatments and I want solutions and I want options and I want someone who's willing to, ask the questions of the various stakeholders to get to that point of view and get to that clarity. Because a lot of what we do is we start with something that isn't very clear, and our job is to create clarity around it so other people know what to do.
Gotcha, gotcha. And one question that I'll ask on behalf someone who's in attendance right now submitted when they registered. The question is, what are some transferable skills that you think would aid someone looking to get into the gaming industry?
Boy, problem solving, problem solving, like, is being a good investigator, right? So, like, I'm trying to think outside of like, okay, so you can draw, you can visually
Yeah,
communicate, you know UI UX patterns, or art. Those are all really, really great things. But if actually, I was thinking of this. I'm gonna make a weird analogy, but I swear every design problem is basically trying to write instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for a robot.
tell me more.
Okay, so it is. Because there's a lot of assumptions you make. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's easy. Okay, is it? Tell a robot how to do it. What do you need to tell a robot to do? It doesn't
Yeah,
know anything. So you have to tell it where to find the peanut butter, where to find a jelly, what to do if there isn't any peanut butter. How do you get the peanut butter out of the jar? How do you deploy it onto the bread? Oh, there's bread. Where does the bread come from? Right?
yeah,
How do you get bread out of the anyway, it's like unpacking a fairly simple sounding thing, but breaking it down into little stepwise chunks. Well, that's the experience. And then what you do is once you have those instructions, you're like, well, how do I optimize this? Is there something that we could automate? Is there something that I could make faster? What are people having a hard time? What's the robot having a hard time doing that I could make easier? So how do I streamline? How do I accelerate? How do I remove the friction? How do I make it fail safe? You know, so that simple thing of like, can you write instructions for how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich
Yeah.
to a robot is honestly, is every single design problem I've ever been faced with.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. And I always like to say, if you've been to an AMA before, that this is not just a conversation between myself and Corey. I think, Corey, one thing that you've mentioned when you and I chatted in preparation, and I'm sure it'll come up again, is this idea of curiosity being so important as a designer. And so, even in this conversation, feel free to make your curiosities known, come off of mute, go into the chat. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a question. If there are comments you want to add to the conversation, definitely do so. It's just not a conversation between myself and Corey, but between all of us and Corey. So I definitely want to create that space. And Sam dropped a little gem in the chat, says communication is also one of those transferable skills, super necessary. So
Absolutely.
thank you for that, Sam.
Yeah. Yeah,
Definitely
for
appreciate
sure.
it.
Problem solving, yeah, communication, um, being, again, that fundamental core skill of curiosity, just being curious about how things work, and
Yeah,
figuring things out. Um, I think being observant, right? Really watching. So on the UX side, that's, the ethnographic research and watching how people use things, watching how people do things in other situations, and then figuring out how to apply that to what it is that you're trying to do, looking for
yeah.
parallels. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Getting back to your career, that is, I continue to say how cool I think your career has been and will continue to be, I'm sure.
Thank you.
You've led teams at Microsoft, Sony, and Amazon. What's your philosophy on building creative teams, and how do you foster an environment where innovation really thrives?
Yeah. That's a, yeah, that's like a multi-million dollar question. But it's about creating a space where people can take risk, right? They
Yeah,
can feel comfortable in trying something out and then it doesn't work and they're not penalized for it. I think as long as I have to stress like velocity, 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 like we really do gotta go fast. Working with urgency, we call it day one culture at Amazon. But the idea is like you're a startup, right? And you're going to be scrappy and you're going to figure out how to make things work and you're going to be optimistic about the future. Um, but you're going to work with urgency. You're not sitting back, you
yeah,
know? Um, so what I try to do is I try to create an environment where, yeah, there's a space where we feel supported. I try to build a culture where people feel connected to each other. Um, they feel supportive of each other, that they can, collaborate together. Critique, elevate each other's work, but also this space for people to go out and solve things, on their own. Because I do believe that there's a really great sense of accomplishment that you get when it wasn't spelled out for you. In fact, there's
yeah,
delight in discovery, right? It's just like a fundamental tenet. There's a just delight in like, I figured out how this thing worked. I figured out what the solution is. And then that propels you on to the next thing. So I try to set things up so that like I focus on first principles, design tenets, frameworks, trying to create like what does good look like, and then let people solve towards that and innovate and invent, and then yes and.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting too this idea of people feeling as though they belong. We talk about belonging so much at D by D. The fact that people feel included, that they feel like they're in an equitable space, because that safety encourages people to take risk. You don't take a risk if you don't feel like you belong to begin with.
Mm-mm.
You're just kind of like, I'm just gonna do what I gotta do to get through the day. I'm not taking any risk. You operate very differently when you feel like you belong on a team. And so I think also this idea of just creating that space that really encourages people to take risks.
Yeah. Yeah, and rewarding it when it works out, not penalizing when it doesn't work out, right? And rewarding it when it does. however that looks. A lot of time that's just celebrating it and making sure that that person gets the right visibility, like upstream. So in a big company like Amazon, that's about creating visibility for people so that the directors and VPs know who the people are who invented something cool, and definitely not taking credit for the work of other people, because that sucks.
Yeah.
Right? Uh, yeah. And then I think it can be a little bit dangerous when you create too collegial and too familiar of an environment. That's a delicate line you do have to kind of walk. Um, I don't really have any advice on that other than be
Yeah, yeah.
careful. Yeah.
Sometimes that is just the advice. Be careful.
Yeah, just watch
Um,
out, it's
yeah.
like, yeah. Yeah.
Um, awesome. Well, I'm going to encourage everyone again, drop it in the chat, come off of mute if you have comments so far about the conversation that we've been having. Would love to hear more from you.
I have a question. So, and it may flip this whole conversation on its head, but Corey
We
knows me
love that.
enough to know. No, no, I think especially for this audience, I would love for you to talk a little bit about why getting involved in the coalition was really important to
Oh
you,
yeah,
getting
yeah,
Amazon
yeah.
involved in the coalition.
Absolutely. Okay. This one, I hope I can tell this in a short way, but it does start very, 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 very early. So my formative years, my a musician. I grew up at band practice. I grew up in recording studios. I grew up around diversity. We always had black and brown people in the band. I played, with black and brown kids. I grew up in the Seattle area, which isn't the most maybe diverse city on the, in the country, but I grew up sort of expecting the world to look a certain way, and I was sort of surprised when I got into the professional environment, it just sort of how white and male it looked. That was just sort of weird. To put a further exclamation point on it, like my first musical taste, I liked Stevie Wonder. I liked Earth, Wind and Fire. Like those were my bands. And my friends, the kids that I play with, they liked Kiss, they liked right. I'd like to say that I had taste. No offense to people who like Kiss, but I just, I think I was right. Um, but I just sort of like so fast forward a lot of time, but I'm in this, professional environment and it's just a lot of white people and it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like we were getting the right mix of ideas, the right mix of lived experience, a lot of sameness. And it really wasn't until I was at Amazon. So fun fact, I took about an 8-year hiatus from games deliberately. I had sort of had enough of the subjectivity of games and the ups and downs, and I deliberately came to Amazon to reinvent myself. I like to say I re-rolled my character and I became an executive producer in the devices organization, and I helped run some creative teams who worked on a bunch of different devices that Amazon shipped. You think of a device and I worked on it. Um, like literally even the little dash button that you push to order your macaroni and cheese. I worked on that. Um, that wasn't my favorite project. I was just like, I mean, like literally, you think of a device and I worked on it. Um, and there was a moment where there was an initiative around developing design community initiatives to elevate the role and the practice of design within Amazon. And somehow I fooled some people into thinking I was the right person to take on that job. So all of a sudden, I'm sort of in this position to influence, not really to demand or determine, but to influence policy, like fundamental policies that reached across the organizations at Amazon for design. And it was in that capacity that I felt like I had an opportunity to like, wait. I can talk to the recruiting people. I can talk to university programs. I can talk to like I have access to everybody. And I can say like, why aren't we doing a better job of recruiting and engaging people? Is it a supply side problem or is it a recruiting and outreach problem? Um, and it just sort of I'm trying to get the to bring the focus back on down, but there was a moment where I was able to shape some pretty big programs, and they're actually the programs outside of games that I'm absolutely the most, um, if I dare say proud. I'm uncomfortable with the word proud. I'd rather say very well pleased. But anyways, I'm very well pleased with these programs because I helped re-engage our university programs to create a specific space for internships at Amazon, and we created an apprentice program that could go out and make uh, uh, just outreach to overlooked areas, historically overlooked areas, and create an opportunity to teach people in a large professional industry and bring skills to kind of nascent talent. Um, and then there was an opportunity to try to like how can Amazon be seen as a thought leader in creating opportunity for people? And that's honestly that was sort of the how might we that shaped the funding for starting our contribution to D by D. Actually, it was we had there was kind of an appetite um, socially. It was the right time. It was sort of not that far disassociated with the George Floyd and so there was an appetite like, okay, we do have this problem. We do need to address this. What can we do? Um, yeah, and then I did a whole bunch of stuff that was really, really hard. And yeah, connected some dots and made some things happen. And then now we get to do this, which I think is pretty cool. If I do say so myself. And I'm probably blushing.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
yeah, I think
No,
it's
I mean, you were running programs prior to D by D, right? That
Yeah.
you
Oh,
just
yeah.
talked about that
Yeah.
were pushing pushing the
They
needle.
were adjacent, but the problem was ultimately, I think that, we did need to do something about creating better awareness and more visibility for design as a real discipline that people can they can do all right in, and they just need to see people. They need to see people like them doing the work. And then, access and opportunities about creating vehicles for access and opportunity. We needed a platform to do that, and we needed a partner um, because we had been trying to do those kinds of things through a volunteer framework inside of Amazon. And as you might imagine, volunteerism is really a nice thing, but it's ridiculously unreliable. In fact, the best way to guarantee that a program is going to fail is to make it volunteer led. So I was able to get people to at least accept that that was true. And if we really believed that this was important, we would need to fund it in some way and put a program manager on it and get a budget for it. And yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Corey. And I only have two more questions. I'm like, I feel like there's so much more that we could talk about, but I
I
want to
could
be
talk forever. I'm sorry.
same. Same. And again, this is my last time I'm going to say it. I promise to everyone who's heard me say it throughout. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or come off of mute. Going back to this idea of marketable commodity, there are so many people who are either graduating who want to become marketable commodities in the design space, or individuals who unfortunately were in the wildest of times in regard to layoffs, who are looking to market themselves in the design space now. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us more about this idea of like your work. It's something that's so personal. I know for a lot of people's portfolios, and it is difficult to get that feedback, but you do want to be marketable in this space. So what is this? You mentioned it earlier. Would love to hear you talk about this idea of being a marketable commodity and how one can do that, kind of whether you're in design or even in other spaces.
For sure. And it's hard, like it's hardest to get started, right? It's really hard to get your foot in the door because
Yeah.
you feel the pressure to be like, well, I'm really interested in whatever it is. I'll focus on game stuff, but it's like I'm really
Yeah.
interested in working on games, but I've never worked on a game. So how do I make a game?
Exactly.
Who will hire me? Well, guess what? The secret is to go make a game. You got to do it yourself though. And so then you have to, but then what you have to do is you're not going to recreate Fortnite because that's crazy. That's a team of 300 people, working for forever on a huge foundation of 30 years of technology that they're building on top of. Like, no, you're not going to do that. What you're going to do is you're going to make crazy bouncy hippo game, and you design a little character and it just runs across the screen and it bounces into stuff and coins pop out of something, and that's it. That's the game. So guess what? You again, this is the peanut butter and jelly sandwich problem, right? You're sort of like, okay, so how do
Yeah.
I do that? How do I make a hippo? How do I put it on the screen? How do I animate it? How do I make it bump into something? How do I make it drop coins? Do I count the coins? Is there a score counter? You just start unpacking all of the pieces into this very simple prompt. And now you're like, okay, but I don't know anything about game engines. Well, there's a whole lot of resources out there. Uh, Guess what? There's a lot of free. Unreal is free. Like if you're not
Yeah.
publishing anything, you can just go use it. So like get in there, um, watch some tutorials. It'll take you a couple of weeks, but guess what? Next thing you know, you'll be staring at this insane network of all of these little objects and these, this graph that looks like spaghetti, and you'll be putting in numbers and you'll hit the play button and all of a sudden you'll have a little
Yeah.
bouncing hippo and coins and you'll be like, I did a thing. Now, is that going to get you a job? No, but it's going to start the conversation. It's going to start the conversation. And now you can start like, okay, I feel comfortable enough that I can go join like a design jam. Is there a local games community? Is there an online games community? Go find it. Okay, now, hey, I can help with that creative jam. And now you're like, okay, I'm the one who made the little dashboard that the player uses to customize the look of their avatar. Guess what? Now you've got a something, you know what I mean? And then, oh wait, I met this person who's doing this startup, and you're networking. And I'll tell you, like, I would never encourage people to be like disingenuous about their networking, but the value of networking is so insanely high. I was listening to an interview with Jordan Peele just the other day, and he was talking about like he has never gotten a gig from a cold audition.
Mm,
That's Jordan MF and Peele. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you kidding me? He's like, for real. Like, yeah, it's like you're gonna have to make connections with people, eventually make connections with people who are doing things. Eventually there's an opportunity where somebody needs they have a they have a cavity and you happen to be the right shape to fill the cavity,
yes.
right? And you just got to be ready. So you got all your work. Me, I had my 10 portfolios, and I was persistent. I got told no by Microsoft more than a dozen times. I went through interview loops. I was told no, no, no. You're to this, you're to that. To cyberpunk was one of the things that I was told. There was one that I went to, and they were like, if we wanted an illustrator, we could hire Marie Sendak. And I mean, like, these are things that are so like, well, I know you could, but it's like I'm here. Um, I just kept going and going and going until there was a thing. It was just like, hey, we need someone to do some sports stuff. They're like, sports stuff? I know. I used to play baseball all the way up into college. I played through high school, and it's like I know baseball. Wait, what if I did something that looked like this? And they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, you'll do nicely. And then next thing you know, it's like you don't let go. The door is open. You're in. You're like a vampire. They let you in. It's like
So there's so many things. Sharon, were you going to say something? I saw your screen light up green.
Yeah, it was answered in the last question, so.
Okay. All right. Well, definitely let me know if there's something else that comes up. Um, there's so many things that came out of what you said that I would love to unpack. Cyberpunk, namely being the first one, because I want to hashtag on that on everything now, but I'm gonna focus.
yeah,
Told no 12 times.
yeah,
Very casually, you said that.
yeah. Yeah, that's about, resilience and grit. And if people haven't read Angela Duckworth's book on grit, I encourage you to go do that because, grit and tenacity and stick with itness. Um, I knew that every time I was being told no, so it hurt. It hurt because you get, you project forward and you see yourself like, I could totally do this for you. What do you mean I'm not the right person? Okay, fine. Um, but but I knew that it was really about just it was a pattern matching thing. At some point, I felt like, surely someone will give me a chance. And like I said, once the door was open, I just kind of didn't let go. And I was trying to be additive all along the way. It's like, oh, you need somebody who can do whatever. I can animate, maybe not super great, but I'll figure it out. Oh, you need someone who can do motion design. Oh yeah, I can do motion design. Check this out. And so it's just like being ready to help wherever anybody needed anything. And then that, it just sort of snowballed uh, from there. But I think that's that an entrepreneurial thing. It's just I'm not sitting around waiting for somebody to tell me they need something. I'm like, well, what would they need? What would they need? What would they need? I bet I could do that. And if I can't, because I can't do everything, um, but if I can't, then what I need to do is find an answer of how we get there. Um, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, 12 times. Yeah, for real.
Yeah, wow. It reminds me, I was told one time, you're the right package, you're just looking for the right address.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like every time I get told no, I'm like, you're the right package, you just gotta find the right address. So it reminds me of that, hearing you say that. And just again, this idea of like marketable commodity, I love it. And it just sounds like being present and doing. Just being out there and like you said, not in a disingenuous way.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
go to the places that sit well and be there and be additive. And the things come, the good things do come.
And it means like a lot of listening too, right? So it's like listening for the opportunity, listening for it's being observant and knowing when that moment is. Um, like again, this is the musical background, but I there's the whole thing about Miles Davis talking about jazz improvisation, and it's like every moment is a crisis, right? And so it's like if you if you know what your abilities are and you know where your opening is, you know when to step in and take the solo. But it's not, you don't just take a solo.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at your partners, and there's little things that they do. They slow down the tempo a little bit. They nod at each other. One of them might, like, make a little facial, and that's the signal for you to go shine. And then you back off, and then you let someone else shine. And I think that's really important. That's like a life skill, another soft skill. uh, as you're doing that, you're orchestrating, if you will, your own contribution to this kind of creative industry. It's like you're developing a set of skills. You can solo in certain environments. Maybe you can solo really well in a lot of things, or maybe you're just a really good drummer, and so you're just waiting for an opportunity for a drummer. That's okay. In fact, maybe you're the best drummer there ever was, so that's cool. I'm kind of jealous of those people because I'm a dabbler. I'm just like surface level at about 100 things. Um, but anyway, I think it's just really important. It's like listening, waiting for the moment, negotiating for, it's like consent. Is this the time for me to show up? It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm here. Is this the time for me to back off? It is. Cool. I'm out. What do you need me to do next? How can I help? How can I lift you up?
Yeah, gotcha. And that was my last question, but I'm excited. Sharon was wondering, you said that you took a hiatus from gaming.
I
How
did.
or why did you get back into it?
Oh, that's a good question. That is a really good question because and I was uh I missed making. I missed building. I missed solving technical problems as opposed to purely experiential problems. So the area that I was in, I was creating experiences for designers, like how is it to be an employee and how is it to, elevate your growth as an employee. And I thought that would be awesome. I thought that would be great. What I found is it was just a kind of hard that wasn't becoming fun anymore. Um, there were huge expectations, a lot of really different voices pulling at you at a million different directions, and your perception of value is really different at different tiers within the company. One tier of employee was like, "You're amazing," and another tier of employee was like, "Why aren't you doing more?" And so that was just really hard to live under. And that plus I'm being honest, so hello internet, that was me being honest. Um, but also at the same time, I'm just like I'm a maker and a builder person, and I just wanted to put a screen up that you could touch and that people um you know I could work with technology people to create something that people haven't seen before and that is entertaining and fulfilling, and there was an opportunity. Speaking of connections, this is a crazy thing. I was out looking for different opportunities as I was trying to disengage from that previous role, and one just sort of knocked on my door. It was a person, God bless him, that I worked with almost 20 years ago, and he was like, "Yo, Corey, do you happen to know anybody who'd be interested in a position that does X, Y, and Z?" And I was like, "Really? Does what exactly?" And they were like, "Yeah, I need someone who can, build a studio that does this, that, and the other thing." And I was like, "What if that person was me?" And they were
Yeah.
like, Wait, what? No, it couldn't be you. You're doing this other stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'd kind of like to change." And it wasn't like a straightforward process to get there, but this connection opened a door, and there I am again. I'm listening, and the door is open. It's like, "Hi, what do you need me to do?" Um, and they didn't really know. They had like anyway. But it was just another great opportunity, and I showed up, and I was like, "Oh, I can answer this problem. I can solve this. I can set up this process. I can do this. I can drive these people in this direction." And I'm so thankful because I enjoy every minute of the work. I don't know that the impact is as rewarding,
Yeah.
but I enjoy the moment to moment like a lot.
Thank you.
I
Awesome.
hope that was I kind of rambled a bit, but
Oh, wait, I'm just seeing this. There's a question from Steven. What kinds of things do you consider when designing a user UI experience that aligns well with the chosen narrative a game means to convey? Thanks for that, Steven.
uh-huh. Well, that is the name of the game. Because yeah, narrative, setting, are really important in what you really want to do with like the visual portion of the user experience is you really do want something that's cohesive with that narrative, with the narrative and the like the art style as well. And so you don't want to design things that are at odds, or at obtuse angles. So what I like to do is I like to work to establish building blocks, like visual building blocks. So you have design primitives that you start working on, like how do you do borders and how do you do backgrounds and how do you do buttons and like all the components that are going to build up an interface, right? Like how am I going to do these that can be broken down into as few primitives as possible, and then you sort of extend from that and all of the different configurations that you end up having for all the different kinds of screens that games will have in them. But you start like, what are my Legos? What are my building blocks? And then you pressure test. There's a lot of pressure testing. And we're going through this right now, actually, where it's like I have a shape language, I have a color story, I have type ramps, I have these components that I can use that are sort of the elements of a design system, but now I need to pressure test them against the different surfaces that are going to show them. It's not unlike doing like logo design and treatment. So it's like you got a cool logo design, but does it look good on a t-shirt? Does it look good on a hat? Does it look good on a billboard? Does it look good on an envelope? If people use envelopes anymore. Does it look good on a poster? Does it, da, 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 da. And you do all these treatments, and then you find like, oh, it reads really well from 100 feet away, but it doesn't look good up close or whatever, right? Like it's the same kind of idea. You've got the shape language and these components, and does it look good when I put it in this context? does it look good when it, look good, and does it communicate the right thing? Because it's a balance of look and feel always.
Corey, this has been such a great conversation. I have gained so much from this conversation. I cannot go out and design a logo, but I am confident in all of the soft skills that I have learned throughout this conversation.
For
So thank
sure.
you so much. I think I speak for everyone when I say we've gained so much from this conversation, and we really appreciate your time. Are you on socials? How can we follow you? How can we?
Oh Lord.
Yes, we're
No.
doing that part of the
I
thing.
am a recluse. So I live out across the Puget Sound on 4 acres where my nearest neighbor is 5 acres away.
Okay.
It's quiet, it's serene. I yeah. But you know what? People can hit me up on LinkedIn. I may be slow,
Okay.
but I will get back to you. Yeah, that's probably the best thing. I don't really like yeah, I don't really do the I'm not
Fair enough.
yeah, I'm just not big on the self-promotion thing. So
It's exhausting sometimes. I feel you for
I
sure. Oh,
I don't I it's just it's a me thing.
yeah,
It's a me thing. I'm just sort of like, how do I make other people better? How do I get you going? I'm more interested in that. But
yeah,
if you can find me, I'm happy to say hi. I'm happy to whatever. Yeah, answer
yeah.
questions.
Well, we will catch you on LinkedIn. I also encourage everyone to follow Diversified by Design on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And before we wrap up, I have to go ahead and plug our next AMA because this one was amazing, and I have no doubt the next one will be amazing as well. We will be in conversation with Antoinette Carroll, who is the president and CEO, yes, at Creative Reaction Lab, and that is happening November
And
6th.
is also joining our advisory
And is
council.
also on
That's
our
the
AC.
best.
We have the best AC, honestly. And so just very excited, November 6th. Matthew would love if you could drop that AMA page where they can register. But again, so excited to be in conversation with Antoinette November 6th at 6:30. Would love to see you there if you are here with us tonight. If you can't make it, tell a friend to tell a friend, because I have no doubt it will be a powerful conversation. Corey, thank you again. We appreciate
Corey, thank you so much. And
My pleasure.
Alasia, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
nice
no
conversation.
problem.
This was so natural and fluid.
That is
Good.
Yeah.
that is the point. I'm glad I was able to create a space where you are able to share because this has been so good. So
Hey,
thank
Steven. We
Yeah,
have to
thank you,
catch up.
Stephen.
I'm sorry, I just saw Steven. I was just like, say hi. I miss you.
Corey, thank you. It was
Yeah,
awesome to have you here.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome. Alrighty, see y'all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh,
Bye.
EJ. Bye.